All right, here we are at Ambary Health in El Paso, Texas, and we have two beautiful women here. And what are your names?
Marlene and Lilian.
Marlene and Lilian. And what are you doing here at Ambary Health?
Well, I own Ambary Health Southwest. We are El Paso's newest premier medical grade hemp nutritional supply company. I have to be real careful how I word that. We are in Texas after all.
And what is the main benefit of your product? What is it really that you're pushing?
The main benefit of my product is that it can help anyone, any age, any demographic, any health history, anything at all, young, it doesn't really matter. These products are for everybody.
Okay, right on. And you said that you've had some challenges having your business. What have some of those challenges been?
The challenges have been literally headbutting with people's preconceptions about what cannabis really is and what it can do and what it doesn't do. People are born with generational preconceived notions of what something is, and cannabis is definitely one of those things. People think cannabis is all about getting high, and this kind of business is important because we need to keep pushing the conversation forward and letting people know that there's many different ways to heal your body, including using cannabis.
And the main thing is that your product doesn't have THC, which you're kind of assuming it does.
100%
Yes, exactly.
lab certified, THC free.
Yep.
And you know, speaking of preconceived notions, a little while ago we were talking about Latinos and how there's all sorts of stereotypes about Latinos.
Yes.
You were mentioning something a little while ago about being overshadowed. Did you want to specify a little more of what you were feeling?
So I think sometimes as an American-born, a U.S.-born Latino, especially once you're third or fourth generation born here, there's this huge expectation that you're supposed to act Mexican or speak Spanish perfectly, be perfectly bilingual. And those of us who are not perfectly bilingual or do not act Mexican, whatever that means, we're labeled, we're stigmatized, we're called snobs. In Spanish, the word would be sangron. We're labeled. And so it feels like there's this limbo, this almost
No man's land.
no man's land for people like us who are visibly Latino, right? There's no mistaking my ethnicity. I look how I look. I'm very proud of how I look. But when we speak a certain way or have a certain level of education, then we're labeled as being a goody two-shoes or even an Uncle Tom. I've been called, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's incredible. You get it from both sides, which is why me personally, I don't like labels. I don't like the separation anymore. It was necessary in my parents' generation, of course, to have things like a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce or a Chicano rights movement. But I think we've progressed past that, in my opinion, and I think I'd rather fight for things like equality of thought, equality of education, equality of lending, equality
Because they
of...
did it. Our parents' generation, they did it.
Yeah.
They made it possible for us to be here, and you grow up and you're too white for the Mexicans, or you're not Mexican enough for the Mexicans for you to fit in. And I think my parents' generation, we're so grateful that they've enabled us this freedom, this ability to, we're owning a business. We are helping people. We are helping to educate our own people. We're not joining the El Paso brain drain. We're here.
This feeling of being overshadowed by Mexican nationals, because we're right at the border and Juarez is right next door. Are you feeling this as well? And is this common to many, many Latinos in El Paso?
Absolutely. I think it's everywhere. Here on the border, maybe a little more, but even then, you speak to our brothers and sisters that live in Juarez, and there's even bigotry between them because they're frontera. They're northern Mexicans. They're not from, you know, El DF. They're not from El Mero.
Exactly. That's why I think, you know, there's always got to be a whipping boy in society. There's always got to be someone less than. I don't like labels anymore. I don't want to be a Hispanic-owned business. I want to be a proud woman person. I don't know. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Oh,
but
absolutely. That
labels
you want to
me-
be seen as a human being.
Right.
And it's like, why limit me to label? This is the whole thing about the unity vibe. It was, I don't care if you're white, black, Christian, Jew, gay, straight. I'll give you one they have a hard time with, legal, illegal.
Yes.
What does our Lord Heavenly Father care about these things?
Right. Exactly.
We're put here to help. We are placed on earth. We all have a different purpose, and we all fulfill it in different ways. This is our calling.
Yep.
This is our true belief. we're here to help.
And don't get me wrong, I'm proud of my Latin heritage. I'm proud of the fact that
Absolutely.
my surname is a Spanish surname. I'm very proud of that. However, I think in this generation, labeling has done more harm than it has good. It's done more separating. It's done more
becoming
antagonizing.
exclusive instead of inclusive.
What do you think about this new term Latinx?
I don't have a lot of experience with it because maybe it's my age. I'm already 40. I don't really...
Do you feel that you're Latinx or do you feel you're a Latino? Why is it bad to say a gender identification? It's almost like they're trying to non-genderize to make it English-like.
Right.
Whereas, what's next? We're going to start telling the French and the Italians to stop using... I'm going to start calling them Mesex.
Right. No.
Right.
La gente, don't say la.
I just think, in general, again, it's a label. I think the label that I'm most proud of is mother, wife, Texan, sister, U.S. citizen maybe. I mean, I am proud to be from here. I love my country. My father and my grandfather are both combat veterans of this country, World War II and Vietnam. And so we're very proud that we're from here. We're also proud of our cultural heritage, our language
beautiful.
heritage. I speak a little Spanish. I'm not completely, monolingual, but I think at this point, like I'm saying, there's been this progression in the last 15 to 20 years where the labeling's just gotten out of hand.
Tenemos que parar de andar separándonos.
Mm-hmm. Big time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think...
Well,
There's
there's
separating us. It's like when you get those little hard-boiled egg cutters and you hold the slicer down. Why add more grooves to the slicer?
Well, one thing I notice here in El Paso is like the building I'm over at, none of the maintenance crew speaks any English at all. Right. I mean, and I'll ask me, ¿por qué no puedes hablar en inglés? And go, porque nos necesita. And I'm saying, well, si yo estoy viviendo en México, me estoy diciendo no quiero hablar en español, ¿qué es eso? What's the difference? I mean, what?
I've experienced that a lot, and I think we are supposed to have a sensitivity towards, especially new immigrants, because it is hard to learn a new language. But once they've been here a while, especially generationally, I think it's actually detrimental to the people who are here who don't speak English because they're victimized. I see it all the time in the checkout line at Walmart. If they're not speaking English and the cashier is not willing to speak Spanish to them, they're spoken down to. They're spoken.
It only
to
makes
horribly.
sense. If I'm living in Mexico, I'm going to not have a problem speaking Spanish.
Well, no one's going to cater to my English if I go to France or Italy or Spain. They're going to expect
and
me.
when we do have people move, you move around in Europe where it borders to everywhere, everyone's always thrilled. Oh yeah, I can speak German and Spanish and French and Italian. So people that move here
and don't make the effort. It's a little crappy.
We traveled in Europe and we make the effort. It was broken French. It was terrible. But you make the effort, and the payback is they're willing to work with you and not against you.
Right.
They're willing to work for you and not block you out and stop your progress.
But it's one of those things, back to the overshadowing. It's you have to walk a fine line between being progressive or open-minded versus, well, you know what? There are some expectations. If you move here, you should learn English. You should... To an extent, assimilate.
Okay. I'm going to get deeper into this with you guys since you're both so well-spoken. I appreciate you taking the time to speak on camera.
Well, thanks.
One of the things that we speak about in Los Angeles often is the film industry because that's where it's at. Have you noticed that there's a lack of Latinos in major leading roles?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Same thing with the news media.
Yeah.
It's like the largest ethnic group outside of the white community has such little representation.
Right.
Now, why do you think that is?
I think we need to stop labeling ourselves and shooting ourselves in the foot. I've met plenty of Mexican Americans, such as myself, who they're not striving, they're not reaching, they're making excuses. Well, they're keeping the brown man down. No, they're not. This is the land of opportunity. I've personally been to Mexico where they are keeping the brown man down. In Mexico where women are getting kidnapped every 10 seconds. In Mexico where you can't have a firearm or freedom of speech, where you get arrested for saying the wrong thing.
Or in Brazil, where women can't have normal, what in America we consider normal, natural childbirth. It literally had to be put into their constitution that these women could have their babies the way they wanted to. Where medical procedures like episiotomies were done without permission, much less letting the female know this is what we're doing.
I just think there's too many excuses. I think we need to own who we are, fight really hard to educate ourselves, and to own small businesses, run big businesses. But stop making excuses. We are in a country that you can do things like that. Stop.
Well,
stop
I'm gonna make an excuse just so you can hear it and give you an example.
Let's hear it.
Well, I think I showed you the Gran Marcha a few seconds ago.
Yes.
Largest march in U.S. history. Very few people know about it. People would give me criticism often. They would say, before that I had the march, well, heck, Angel, what the Latinos need to do is they need to be vocal the way the blacks were in the 60s. They need to march, and they need to stop complaining, and this is the land of opportunity. Get off your hiney and go for it and make some noise. I could not have created a bigger demonstration than the largest in U.S. history.
Right.
But it got virtually no mainstream mass media coverage.
Right.
There is a real problem. There is a problem about the person that is controlling who gets the exposure, not giving it to the Latino. So the problem does exist. It's not like there's not screenwriters in LA that are of Mexican descent that aren't submitting
Because
their
then
projects.
all think
They
we're-
are.
They all think we're people that are from movies like El Mariachi, which is a fantastic
Mm-hmm.
film. I love those actors. I love those films. But there's more to us than that.
Absolutely. And
You know,
that
we're
was
not-
made
we're
because
not
it was
all-
made
we're
outside of
not all
Hollywood.
gangbangers and like meat grocery store owners. Yeah, there's more
That's-
to it.
that's
Well,
very
to add to
true.
what you're saying, I think there's a bias in all different areas. For example, I'm born and raised Catholic, proud of my faith. The March for Life happens every January on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. Gets zero media coverage. And it's the largest civil rights demonstration in this country every single year. It fills up Washington, D.C. The hotels don't know what to do because they're filled to max capacity. And as a Catholic, not even as an ethnic label, but being a Catholic is universal. There's Catholics of every ethnicity and race. It pisses me off as a Catholic that doesn't get media coverage. Why? Because there's a built-in Catholic bias in the media. For example, when a priest molests someone, it's on every network in the world. When a Protestant pastor does it, hardly makes the news.
It's true.
That's a very good point.
Right.
Yesterday, on the 8th, it was called the Rosary Coast to Coast, where Catholics all around the world, coast to coast, got together, prayed the Rosary at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
No
I saw
media
no
coverage.
No coverage.
So there is bias. You're absolutely right. I think to help the Latino cause, however, I think we need to forward ourselves as you're doing. Small business, media work, outreach, helping people.
Work with each other and for each other and not against each other.
One of the reasons that I'm so proud of what you ladies are doing here is because you are opening a business and a very progressive you're educating the public, you're providing a service and a product that is just needed and great.
Right.
Have you noticed, though, how many more businesses seem to be owned by Mexican nationals than Mexican Americans?
Oh, absolutely. There was a huge wave of it during the crime wave, I believe in the early 2000s when the crime was really bad in Juarez. A lot of them who were able to, who had the money to, came over and
Established homes,
established
their
businesses.
Right. So with regards to the Mexican Americans, you're wonderful examples of the sentiment that millions of people have as Mexican Americans, being overshadowed and not being heard. What do you think is holding back all these Mexican Americans from doing what you've been able to do? Do you think it's really just complaining, or do you think there really are some obstacles?
I don't know. I can only speak to my own experience. And my own experience has been always just working really, really hard. Get it from our dad, who always told us to not make an excuse for anything. I personally,
grandparents.
thank goodness.
You're fourth generation?
Yeah, my great-grandfather, his daughter, my grandma, my mom, and then me. My kids are fifth generation. So, I don't know. I can only, like I said, speak to my own experience. Thankfully, I've never encountered a roadblock unless I've put that roadblock there myself. I went to the bank and I got my business loan just fine, just like the next person did. They looked at my credit, they looked at my qualifications, just like they would anybody else. So I don't know. I know that in my parents' generation, especially Jim Crow here in the South, there were a ton of restrictions. There were no business loans for a person with a Spanish surname. There were no business loans for Marquez or Armendariz. But now there is. So
my
I don't know.
My grandmother owned an upholstery store, but it was not through the bank. It was they had to find the cash and they had to do it, straight. Right. And it was owned by a female.
So I don't know, maybe it's because I'm from El Paso and I live here. We're 80% Hispanic. I don't encounter a lot of hatred or beef. I don't know, maybe LA is a different dynamic, but here in El Paso, I mean, I've had a lot of wonderful things and success, and so I can't complain about it.
We've been blessed to grow up in the majority. Even though we're a minority, we're the majority here.
Right.
Being married to someone in the Army, we were stationed in the state of Washington, where as a Mexican American, I was 3% of the population. As a Roman Catholic, I was like 0.5%.
And did it feel different than being in El Paso? What was the difference?
My running joke was the only brown I see is when UPS came to the door. Because, or it was the typical standard vision that America has of us. If I wanted to see my people, they were in East Washington working the farms, or they were cutting people's yards. It was a very small group of us, and I had to find them. I had to look for my Catholic sisters and brothers. I had to find Hispanics in the community, and they're there, and they're contributing. They're just a very, very, again, it's a minority. And then when I came back to El Paso, I never felt so out of place, but yet back home at the same time, where I really realized, and I really grew to love and honor those generations that did come before us, that did do they did the pavement here for, they did the foundation for what we can do.
My parents they're both graduates of El Paso High School, and they remember the students being expelled for speaking Spanish. Didn't matter where they were born. If they were born here, it didn't matter. They were expelled from school. Jim Crow was a brutal time to grow up in the South. Texas is the heart of the South, so it was brutal. I'm not denying that there's been issues against minorities in this country historically. I think my argument now, as a person growing up and living in 2018, I think we can. I don't know. I do think we have progressed. Maybe I'm too optimistic. Maybe
many people would say that we progressed if you're looking at unemployment, but then if you look at the general tenure of the Trump era, it has been very pejorative of our community. It's been labeling us as rapists, murderers. I, as a Latino, take personal offense to that in the extreme.
Right, sure.
And, here we are in El Paso, Beto O'Rourke. What do you think about Beto? Does he have a shot against Ted Cruz?
I think his campaign has been a little weak. We were discussing this earlier. I don't think he's been as vocal as he should have been.
What should he say?
He should capitalize on the fact that he's a Texan. I mean, like you said, Ted Cruz is a Canadian. Yep. To get the Texan vote,
you need to say you're Texan. That's all it takes to say you're Texan.
Walk around in your boots and say that you're a Texan and that you care about Texas. I mean, he does say that
because he was born and raised here. His dad held office here. I went to high school with him, his children and my stepchildren. They all went to school together. He's, from here. He is from here. He has seen the struggle of the immigrant. His last name's O'Rourke. So he does have that immigrant aspect that's alive and well in him. And, but his family, they owned businesses here. They, persevered. They did what they had to increase the level of who they are and what they represent. And so I think he needs to market that. He needs to say, I'm a Texan. We've owned businesses here. I'm proud of where I'm from.
Exactly. Say you're a Texan. Hype it. One of the things I love about Beto is that he has been very vocal about how peaceful El Paso is versus the Trump diatribe of it being so dangerous, being on the border. I mean, you would think everybody in El Paso is just in fear of MS-13 every second of the day.
Well, it was, as my sister said, previously, 2009, 2010, with the wars that were going on with the cartels, it was dangerous here. My husband,
but not El Paso.
Not here, but in Juarez, it was pretty heavy.
Right, but we're talking about El Paso. We're talking about Beto's congressional district. I'm so proud of him that he has expressed how safe it is here, and to get rid of this
Yes.
false
We grew up on the
stereotype.
west side. Attention, everybody! I don't lock my doors. I don't lock my door. My parents' house is never unlocked. You walk in the door. We were raised believing it was safe, knowing
This is
that
a
it was
beautiful
safe.
city. It is safe.
It's relaxed.
It's got the best weather in Texas. I gotta say.
Humidity.
We can be outside 9 to 10 months out of the year.
Yeah,
Well-
East Texas has horrible weather.
We're going on 20 minutes now, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this in a little bit. I want to ask you just real quickly about the national scene. What do you feel about Donald Trump?
About Donald Trump specifically, the person, I don't think he'd be a friend of mine. I don't think he'd be someone I'd invite to dinner.
Wait, hang on. No, he's not on my speed dial. No.
I don't know, politics.
Why is he so popular?
I think because he speaks to a lot of he speaks to the anger in a lot of people.
A lot of
Now,
what kind of people?
I'm 100% behind his Make America, first
You don't think
again.
America is great?
I said Make America first again.
I see.
I think we need to, why send $1 billion to Africa when we've got combat vets living under the bridge over here because
Yep.
they can't afford their houses?
El Paso's a big military town, and all of us are sick and tired of previous policies that put our veterans last, and we're dishing out millions and billions to other countries because we're not just Texan, we're military here. Fort Bliss is a huge thing here for us. We love our soldiers.
And a lot of
So to
our
see
products really do help.
To
our
see that is
PTSD
kind of
patients.
infuriating. But to get back to your question, politically speaking, I don't really share really personal stuff, but I do think that Donald Trump is successful because he speaks to the anger in a lot of people. And I will say, I voted for Barack Obama twice, each time. I knew him personally, actually. He was a state senator in Illinois when I was in college. Part of his community service was to help little college students like myself in their student organizations. I was a part of a student organization called MIG, Model Illinois Government. We'd go down to Springfield and argue fake legislation, and he was our coach twice a semester. He'd come in and help our teacher put together legislation and help us learn how to argue a bill. It was fantastic. Skinny guy walking in, big smile, very humble, very nice. I moved back home after college. My mom says, that Osama guy that was your coach, he's going to win the Democratic nomination. I said, are you kidding? I never watched TV. And sure enough, there he is, standing there. And I knew him personally, so of course I voted for him. Of course I did. But his policies weren't always legit with minorities, including Latinos. And I think Trump speaks to that anger that some of them feel.
I've heard that a number of times about how Trump is speaking to the anger, but he's also creating a lot of anger. For example, here in Tornillo,
Yes.
where he's ripping from the arms of a mother their baby because she's seeking asylum to have safety for her children. There's no nation on earth that doesn't recognize the importance of asylum seekers.
Right,
That's not breaking the law.
right.
I mean, certainly you could not condone that type of thing. And does that speak to this anger you're speaking about, or is that creating anger in our Latino community?
I think there's a lot of stuff.
division.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on that the average citizen isn't aware of. Being in this business, I've had a chance to communicate with lots of federal agents. I've met Border Patrol agents, Customs agents, FBI, DEA. They do a lot of work that the average person doesn't really become made aware of. It's a very hard job.
Such as what?
Such as man the border, protect the border.
Do you see the border as being as dangerous as Trump is saying?
I don't really know.
Statistics don't show that.
No, I don't think the border is dangerous. Thanks to the people who are helping us protect it.
Where are these people that are hopping the fence? Where's
they?
the tunnels? If you were to listen to national media,
Right.
they
We're
make it as though
locating
there's people that are
tunnels.
catapulting across and there's people that are swimming the reel by the hundreds. I've been here for a little while. I don't see it.
No.
I see a lot of false narrative that is creating a danger that doesn't really exist. And I understand that the Border Patrol has a job just as the LAPD does, and people that wear uniform have a job. But to give
And don't get us
blindsided
wrong,
loyalty.
It doesn't happen just because we don't see it. Just because you didn't catch your kid jumping out the window to go to the party doesn't mean he didn't jump out the window to go to the party.
I mean, what I'm saying is it's a huge, complex, multifaceted issue when you're talking about immigration.
And the story is really told in the statistics.
And I
really
think
is.
Trump,
It is.
to quote Beto, not word for word, but he said, Trump likes to instill this fear so that what they can do is go in and grab the land that belongs to farmers, that belongs to people who would have had that land for generations, and now because of eminent domain, they're going to pay pennies on the dollar for that land because we have to have that border type of protection.
Well, we
So
do
it
need
takes a
borders,
lot of
and we do
things.
need protection.
We do need borders. We do
I mean,
need
there's some
protection.
scary stuff that happens.
But we also need civility and respect for all
Yes,
people, and not
absolutely.
general labels.
There's a local place that the church runs called Annunciation House, and it's run by Ruben Garcia or Ruben Ortiz, one of those last names. And we've always been affiliated as a church, taking stuff down there to help. It's mostly undocumented migrants, which is even a more perilous situation for them to be in.
For
'cause
them.
when you don't have a document with your name on it, you have no idea how invisible and how insignificant you are here. You can't get a crumb of food. You can't get anything if you don't have any kind of documentation. So that place is really important. It has a special place in my heart because most of the people coming up that are undocumented are escaping horrible
Situations.
war-torn situations in Central America,
And
Southern
yeah,
Mexico.
exactly. You need to understand it's not like people are coming from Juarez to jump the fence.
No.
They're making these huge voyages on land, on foot, just to get from Honduras, from Uruguay, from Paraguay,
Yeah.
to
I
get
understand.
away from dangerous
I
situations.
got it. So we have 4 minutes left, and I'm going to give each of you 2 minutes right now to tell me what you feel about America. Or if you had, let me put it to you this way: do you have any parting words? Because you're kind of representing a sentiment that millions have, but is very rarely heard.
Okay.
As a U.S.-born Mexican American living in El Paso, Texas. Let me start with you. Was there anything that you would like to tell America about your experience here or what you're feeling these days?
I'm proud to be American, pero tengo mucho orgullo ser hispana. It's important not to lose your culture, but I also don't think we should give up any part of our culture to fit into somebody else's. I think you be you. You do you. Stop dividing us. Stop labeling us. Stop separating us. We don't fit into pigeonholes or cubby holes. We can be moms. We can be wives. We can be business owners. We can be anything we want to. With or without your labels, we're going to.
Wonderful, thank you. And did you have anything you would like to tell America?
I'm a proud Texan. That's my favorite label. Love being a Texan. Love being from here. I'm a very strong Tejana. I come from very strong Tejana roots. My grandma's a pistol. My mom's a pistol, and so am I. And I'm raising one myself. Her name is Sarah. Anyway, my experience. Well, the question was, what is my experience?
Do you have any parting words you'd like America to hear about being a Latina in El Paso?
Yeah, I'd like to say that being a Latina is a wonderful thing. Very proud of my culture. I appreciate this country. I appreciate the wonderful things that it gave the generations that came before me, my great-grandparents and my parents. They love this country too. We were raised in a family that loves this country, and we're so blessed to be here. And my parting words would be just to embrace who you are. Don't try to divide yourself or separate yourself based on your ethnicity or your culture. It's more important to be one and to work together.
Well, thank you. That is so wonderfully said, ladies. I so much appreciate your
So
time.
what exactly is this for? I'm a little
This is for
nervous,
Mexican American News. And do you mind if we share it with the public?
I don't know. I mean, show me an edit or show me what, I mean,
Oh, well, we can certainly show it to you right now. If you like what you said, then only with your permission.
well, yeah. I don't mind. I didn't say anything inflammatory.
No, it's being real. It's being real, and it's being who you are, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again.
And go out and vote, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you haven't registered, do it.
Isn't
Go
that the
online.
most annoying thing in the world is
Please
people who
vote.
don't vote?
Exactly.
It's like the most annoying.
Well, we can all agree on that. Vote. It's coming up. It's only a month away.
You can
month
even
away,
register.
guys.
I think you can even register through Facebook now. Like, it's ridiculous. There's no excuse to like.
To not
And would you
vote.
say vote Beto?
And don't just
I
register.
would.
Go vote.
He's our local guy, of course.
Absolutely. Peace, ladies. Thank you so much.